It's a law that the city council passed that every employee of the city of Chicago must meet a residency requirement. In other words, if I work for the city of Chicago, I must reside within the city of Chicago. If I'm a Chicago public school teacher, if I work for the Chicago Fire Department, Chicago Police Department, the city clerk, if I work within the city in any capacity, the law that's passed by the city council is that I must live within the city limits. Well, that's good and fine, and one of the reasons is because they don't want to take you to make money working for the city and take these tax dollars to the suburbs. So they made a rule that says you have to live in the city. Well, my question to that same city council, if I am a working citizen of this city, let me rephrase that. If I am a working resident of this city, required to live in this city, and my tax dollars fund this city, why don't the city council pass a law that says out of the $6 billion that we spend in this city and on the city contracts that we spend, that in order to get a city contract, you have to live in the city of Chicago? Why don't they do that? If your tax dollars is funding and operating this city, make the dollars stay in the city. Well, you see, all the services that we need, we can't get contractors and suppliers within the city. Well, then you have a special exemption to go outside the city if you can't get those needs and services. But see, what happens when you begin to keep the wealth in the city, a city that's 52% black and Hispanic, all of a sudden you would change the dynamics of the city. All of a sudden you will have a working poor becoming a working middle class. Because see, what happens if you give me a $10 million contract to supply books to the Board of Education and to supply pens and paper and computers and telephones to the city of Chicago, as a minority, as a black man, let me just make this as clear as the nose on your face, then I have to go out and hire employees. And if I got to hire those employees within the city, all of a sudden you're going to have the poor and the working poor becoming a middle class entity in the city. And that's called shifting the wealth of the city. And you see, there are powers in place that don't want that. All of a sudden, if I got $10 million and millions of dollars in contracts with the city, or let me put it to you like this. If I was the Duffs, the mayor's friends, and I had $100 million in contracts, can you envision how many jobs I would create in this city? So what has happened, when Harold Washington was in office, you had 33% of the contracts going to blacks and minorities. You had wealth. So you had created a new middle class. You had created rich black folks that the mayor is concerned about. But now you're down to 9%. So think of how many less black folks and Hispanic folks you have created wealth for. And you see, what's happening is we need new leadership in this city with a vision. Not just for the rich, but for the poor and the working poor. To let them come into the inheritance of the working middle class. To let them come into the inheritance of wealth and not poverty. You need new leadership. We should not have to depend on a Walmart coming into our community to create some $7, $8, $9, $10 jobs when we're turning over $6 billion a year in wealth from the city of Chicago. The Chicago Board of Education has a $5 billion budget. That's $11 billion right there. The Department of Water Reclamation has a $1 billion budget. And the County of Cook has a $3 billion budget. Not to mention the state of Illinois $56 billion budget. And I want you to put your thinking caps on, people, because see, we got to learn to think out the box, outside the box as a people. This is the budget of the city, the budget of the Board of Education. This is the budget of Department of Water Reclamation. This is the budget of the county. This is their budget. This don't take in the budget. This don't take in, that's the billions of dollars that's flowing through our governmental agencies, entities. This don't take in the billions that's flowing through this city by businesses, mom and pop business, other big businesses that turn over dollars in this economy. This don't take in all these other dollars that flow outside of our governmental entities that we're missing out on because the flow of the wealth is being diverted, and then we have leaders that will get on TV and act like they're concerned about the poor, the needy, the black community, the Hispanic community. We have the haves acting like they're concerned about the have-nots when they're not. They're concerned about themselves and their own interests. And the bad part about it is the mayor made this announcement expressing his concern about those fighting economic development coming in the black community, and then he had black leaders standing up there with him and didn't say nothing. So I guess they didn't say nothing. Standing with him said, yeah, bring on these $6, $7, $8, $9 hour jobs to bring economic development in our communities. That was a slap in the face to every decent-minded black person in this city to make a statement that economic development was coming to our communities in the form of a Walmart building in our community when you have $56 billion flowing through this state, when you have $3 billion flowing through this county, when you have $5 billion flowing through this Board of Education, when you have $6 billion flowing through the city, and you have $1 billion flowing through the Department of Water Reclamation. That was an insult. What you need to do is get these so-called leaders together and get these so-called leaders together that eat at the same table that the mayor and the governor and all these other elected officials eat at, and drink from the same trough that they drink from, and you need to make them be accountable. Those same leaders that stood with the mayor when he stood in my 34th Ward at 119 I-57 should have said, Mr. Mayor, as soon as you finish this press conference, I want you to come back to our office. And we need to hear your vision for real economic development in the black community before you get ready to run for re-election